Ironically, when your progress slows down is the most productive portion of your training cycle. It's not unlike training to failure. The last few reps slow down, not voluntarily, of course. You're not trying to go slow, you're trying to go as hard as you can. Going slow is not the aim, but being forced to go slow is where the most productive training happens, whether that's progression in your training cycles or rep speed at the end of your set. Odds are, if you're always progressing very rapidly and you're always lifting very rapidly, you're not training hard enough to grow. I'm Faz. I've been coaching serious lifters for over a decade now. I've trained naturals, enhanced guys, beginners, advanced, and everything in between. And this part of the process never changes. Once the neurological gains are done, you either grind through the real progress or you don't grow. That's just the way it is. It's what I teach every day through my coaching, my books, and also now my app. Now, this video is mostly about training, but the final point is something about nutrition. And I'm going to share with you the technique that I use with my clients to ensure that we do actually execute a proper lean bulk, which I think a lot of people struggle with. But there's a little bit of a shift that you can implement in your nutrition just to help with that. And you'll see what I mean and how it all makes sense towards the end of the video. But anyway, let's start with the first talking point. I want to start with discussing what happens when you start a new routine. Whether it's a completely different routine or whether it's just a change of repetition ranges. Either way, what happens is you will get some quick initial gains because you're going to relearn, assuming you've not done it for a while, or learn how to train in that rep range with that exercise order, everything. So you learn it. You have some quick neurological gains. These are what in the research is called coordination. You get better at just doing it. Like you were practicing playing tennis. Your backhand will improve just by doing it. That happens fairly quickly. And over the first month or maybe two, you'll get some fairly rapid neurological gains. Okay? Now, the problem is, at the point where it starts to slow down, is where most people think it's not working. They say, hey, well, Faz, look, I'm not progressing. I haven't managed to add weight to the bar this week. What went wrong? So what you guys have to understand is this, right? Nothing went wrong. You're in a good spot. Once your easy neurological gains have tapped out, right, any further improvements have to come from increased muscle mass. So if you're not growing, you're not gaining. So if you're in a position where your fast gains are tapped out, good. You're now in a position where if you carry on and be consistent, you actually have the chance to grow because you're giving the muscle the stimulus it needs to actually grow. And growing for naturals isn't that fast. For beginners, it's different, right? You see very quick gains as a beginner, which is also part of the problem because people go from the beginner stage having seen quick gains and then assume that's what's going to happen the rest of the training life. Oh no, young grasshopper, that is not how it works. I remember for me as well, it was a big kick in the teeth. I had a big plateau when I hit about 200 pounds in the bench, about 350 in the squat. You guys all know the story about 400 pounds in the deadlift, 450 in the deadlift. Now, at that stage, luckily for me, I had people around me who were saying, this is where things slow down. This is where you've got to knuckle in and dig deep. And I realized that very early on. And I realized that the only true progression, which actually made me bigger, was the progression that came after that point. I get bigger when I'm adding less weight to the bar each week or each month. Again, not on purpose. You're not trying to slow down, right? So don't go ahead and just start a new routine and add weight really slowly. That's not the point. Like, you add weight when you can, okay? But once you are done with those easy neurological gains of a new routine or a new rep range, that is when things have to slow down. And that's what we're talking about today. Now, years ago, it's 2021, my very first video that I created for this channel was about this concept here, the golden zone, and my markers of progression theory, which are both still extremely valid. The idea behind the markers of progression is to pick about 3 to 5 exercises which cover your whole body and stick to those. And that pairs naturally with the golden zone because what you have to do is you have to ensure that you're sticking to those exercises and making sure that you continue to be loyal to them when the progress slows down, because that is when you are gaining strength via increased muscle. Do you get what I'm saying? Because I see this so much. People think, right, 1 week I've not been able to add reps. What happened? Nothing happened, bro. You didn't gain enough muscle that week to justify one whole additional rep. You know, for most people, one whole additional rep is about 2.5 kilos or 5 pounds on the bar if you're training with heavy sets. So are you really going to add the equivalent amount of muscle that actually lets you put on 2.5 kilos or 5 pounds to the bar every week? I doubt it. Like, unless you're juicing hard, which I assume most people on this channel aren't doing, then no, you're not going to add mass that quickly. Now, there are going to be three types of people listening to this video. The first type of person knows this, and it's an obvious point, and they add weight slowly and they gain. They're just going to be nodding their heads because they're probably advanced lifters. The second group, this is going to be completely new. And I'll be like, hey, Faz, this is new, I guess. Maybe that's where I went wrong last time. Both of those groups will be perfectly fine. Okay, the first group knows what they're doing. Second group has realized what they need to do. Now, there's going to be a third type of person, and that is the person who listens to this message and goes, no, Faz, I know that, but carries on doing exactly what they were doing before. And next week, when they don't manage to hit a PR, they turn around and change your routine, because that's what people do. They pick up something, they nod their head, because they're not on YouTube for a new opinion. They're on YouTube to justify what they're doing. So yes, I'm kind of talking beyond the fourth wall here and saying, guys, wake up. For that third group who are just nodding along going, yeah, of course, Faz, we get it. No, we actually get it. This is why you're still stuck. This is why your bench isn't going anywhere. It hasn't been going anywhere for the past 3 or 4 years, because you're not sticking to things for long enough. Do the work and wait for the adaptation to occur. If the adaptation doesn't occur, it's probably not a routine problem. You're probably not training hard enough or eating well enough, or you're changing routines far too often. And on that note, I do coach full-time for a living. So if this is something that you feel you need help with, or let's just say you don't know what you need help with. Let's say you've been training for 3 to 5 years. You've got no idea why you're not more advanced. You should be further along. And all of this sounds a little bit kind of vague, but you're not really sure how it applies to you. Get in touch for coaching. Let me work with you for 6 months to a year and let me get you on the right track. This is what I do literally every day of the week. Okay. Get in touch. There's a link in the description and we can talk. I've got lots of options for you to work with me. Now, next thing I want to discuss is a bit more specifically about coordination, the neurological gains, right? Essentially, what we're looking at is improved motor unit recruitment, intermuscular coordination. Okay, that means the idea of some muscles firing, other muscles relaxing at the same time, because lifting is a bit of an unusual activity in that sense. Some things have to remain rigid, other things have to move, other things have to remain passive. Not everything can just tense up at once like you're in a fight. So there has to be a degree of intermuscular coordination that improves earlier on too. And the final thing is just the skill of lifting, the skill acquisition. This is why beginners improve so quickly, but also why beginners don't actually gain that much muscle. You hear it on the forums every single day. You go onto Reddit, any number of people will be saying, hey, I got strong, but I didn't get big. Now, sometimes they're doing some pretty obvious things which are wrong, but other times they're just not that strong. Like, I'm sorry, Mr. I bench plate and a half. You ain't that strong. That's why you're not that big. Bench 2.5 for reps. Okay, now if you're still not big, well, then there's maybe a problem. You see what I'm saying? Some people think they're strong because the definition of what is strong has been diluted so much over the years, because everybody wants to talk about how strength standards are unfair, you know, and how we're not powerlifters. You know who says that? People who are fucking weak. That's who says that. People who are excellent at being mediocre. But fact of the matter is, you're going to have to get stronger to get bigger. So this is why a lot of beginners, they tend to reach a reasonable level of strength, but then they trail off. Their definition of what is strong is considerably different to mine and other serious bodybuilding and fitness coaches. So essentially, the majority of those improvements are neurological improvements, okay? Not as much concomitant muscle increases. So if you take that attitude of assuming you're always going to have quick gains and you apply that to intermediates, you're just never going to gain, because you're always going to be changing exercises, changing routines, constantly resetting the rep range in the quest for those quick gains, not realizing that what you think is a plateau isn't a plateau. It's what actual progress looks like. Now, at this point, I want to just stop and shout out the sponsor of the video, and that is me, my app, Fazlifts RX, your prescription for gains. This will have all these concepts built in. This is an AI powered coaching app. You get to train directly on my methods. You can talk to virtual Faz on your phone. It's really cool, actually. I mean, just, video aside for 1 second, this is actually a really cool piece of tech. You can literally talk to virtual Faz right after you work out, tell him how your workout went. He will adjust things if needed. At the end of every week, you get a check-in. You can talk to him then. He will adjust things if you need. All you need to do is sign up, tell him what you want. Just speak to him. Don't speak to me. Speak to virtual Faz. He will give you everything. It's insane how good this is. Go download it. The link is in the description below. Now, next thing that we're going to talk about is why it's important to stay in the golden zone. Okay, so for me, this is where any further gains in repetition strength or weight on bar will have to occur predominantly from muscle gain. This is slower, but muscle gain is slower. Neurological gains are rapid. I mean, when you're detrained, neurological gains happen literally within the hour. But muscle gains don't happen that fast. And also, this is another thing. For me, when I was coming up, when I was a powerlifter, and I was expecting progress from month to month, if I didn't have progress, I didn't look at my routine. I looked at my diet. I looked at my sleep. And I think this is a paradigm shift which we need to reintroduce to the lifting space. If you're not progressing, don't look at your routine. Look at your effort in the gym. Look at your diet. Look at your sleep, your R&R. Look at your stress levels. Something that an early mentor drilled into my skull was that the first major plateau you ever have will be addressed by diet, not by changing your routine. You have to learn the relationship between diet and training progress early on. If you don't learn it early on, you're never going to truly understand it. Better quality diets, more calories tend to improve things and help you moving forward. And on that note, just before we finish, I want to just plug a video that I made just a couple of weeks back in regards to putting this into play. So whether you're talking about the golden zone or whether you're talking about progression anxiety, like all these things are the same. They're describing the same thing. The practical rule that I put into place a few weeks ago, which I shared with you guys as an insight into what I do with my clients, is I have people progressing once a month. It's about right. It simplifies things. It systematizes things. Once you've got those initial quick gains out the way, you've started a new routine, initial neurological gains, you're back to the top where you should be. Usually takes 2 or 3 weeks, right? At that stage, adding weight once per month is a good, reasonable standard. It doesn't have to be once a month. There's nothing special about once a month, okay? So don't get hung up on that. Don't start going on Reddit saying Faz says you can only progress once a month. It's not important. But it works out to be about right. If you're executing what should be a fairly lean bulk, you should be able to add weight to the bar about once a month, and then during the course of that month, build your reps back up, clean up your form, and progress. And listen, that's not slow. 2.5 kilos, right, per month over the course of 12 months is 30 kilos. 30 kilos on a lift? Who are you kidding? That's insane progress. If you are benching, say 90 kilos for a set of 8 or 6 now, benching 120 for 6 to 8 will absolutely transform you. Absolutely transform you over the course of 12 months. You will look completely different. Your entire upper body structure will be much bigger and broader. It's not slow progression. But anyway, I watched the video. I'll link it up there and decide for yourself. But it's a good way to do things. Now, the final point I want to talk about is nutrition. Okay, so here's a little trick that I do with my clients to ensure that we actually execute good lean bulks. So I only initiate the bulk once we're past those initial neurological gains. Simple. Because think about it logically. Why would you? Why would you add in a surplus of calories? You're not providing a good enough muscle stimulus yet. You can do that at maintenance. I mean, you can even do that on a cut, assuming your routine isn't stupid. If you assume you have a good routine, a good program, a good coach, hey, you can do that in a deficit even. So once those initial neurological gains are out the way with a new routine, that is when we start to add calories in so that you can ensure those calories are going to be put to good use. Because neurological gains don't need calories, okay? Past, recovery. But muscle gain does. So get to the point where you're training hard, where progress has slowed down, then you add calories. That gives you the best chance of executing an actual lean bulk. The fabled lean bulk, it's not that complicated. What normally happens is people start a bulk, they start a bulk very aggressively because Mike Israetel told them to, and they gain a bunch of fat and they end up looking like Mike. Not a good situation. Before they've even got to the business end of the training cycle. Not a good situation. So simple tweak and it makes a big difference. Right. If all that made a lot of sense to you, if it resonates with you, good. I'm glad. That's why I'm here, to help with your progress. What I would recommend doing now is watching the video to do with monthly progression. Go check that out and I'll see you over there. Peace out.